Then one of the 12, who was called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What will you give me if I betray him to you?" They paid him 30 pieces of silver. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him." At once he came up to Jesus and said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Then they came and laid hands on Jesus and arrested him. In our post-Freudian world, some people tend to be more sympathetic to Jesus than was the case in former generations, or indeed by those who wrote the Gospels. We're not the first, of course. The Gospel of Judas, a Gnostic text from the 2nd century, written in Coptic, possibly translated from a slightly earlier Greek version, discovered in Egypt in the 1970s, opens with these words: "The secret account of the revelation that Jesus spoke in conversation with Judas Iscariot during a week, 3 days before he celebrated Passover." And continues later, "Knowing that Judas was reflecting upon something that was exalted, Jesus said to him, 'Step away from the others, and I shall tell you the mysteries of the kingdom. It is possible for you to reach it, but you will grieve a great deal.'" The origin and purpose of this text is not clear, but there were obviously those who were more sympathetic to Judas and even thought that he betrayed Jesus at his command. Now, I suspect that not many would go that far these days, but we might want to reflect on why he did what he did and how we might have reacted in the same situation. The only two pretty certain pieces of information we have about Jesus are that he was called as one of the 12 apostles and that he betrayed Jesus. People have clutched at fragments from the Gospels to understand more about Judas, his background, his motives and intentions, but none with any certainty. So we have to resort to speculation to see whether we can gain any understanding of why he did what he did. He'd been with Jesus for about 3 years. I think we can rule out the idea that he just needed the money. If he'd wanted to earn more, he would probably have gone off and done something else rather sooner. The most common assumption that he was trying to provoke a crisis, in its more literal meaning of a moment of decision, seems more plausible. Jesus spoke all the time about the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven, but the disciples and others had trouble grasping what he meant by it. It didn't look like the earthly overthrowing of the Roman authorities and the restoration of God's rule over the land of Israel. Whatever Jesus was talking about, it seemed to be something different from that. But what? Was Judas simply trying to provoke Jesus into taking decisive action to usher in the sort of kingdom that he, Judas, thought that he, Jesus, ought to be fighting for? Who knows? What is certain is the betrayal of others is often a multi-layered and complex thing. We betray people and ideas and principles for all sorts of reasons, some of which are more noble than others. I wonder whether we all have memories of betrayals given and received which have stayed with us. When I was about 13, on holiday with my mother and sister on the island of Iona, I met a boy a year or two older than I, just outside the Abbey, and we must have fallen into conversation. I can remember almost nothing about him or the conversation, except that he must somehow have told me that he was wrestling with the thought that he was homosexual. And I can't remember now how the conversation ended, how things were left with him, but I do remember running back to the place we were staying with some terror, but with the feeling which has stayed with me ever since, that somehow I betrayed his revelation, that he'd shared something personal and deep, and that somehow I betrayed his trust by not staying and talking with him more. It's ridiculous, really. I probably didn't even know what it meant to be gay, not a word we used in those days in the early 70s. And how could I possibly have been expected to know how to handle a conversation like that? But the feeling that I'd betrayed him stayed with me, and I'd have given a good deal to have met him again to complete the conversation in a more satisfactory manner. That's a tiny, tiny incident, but it does lead to reflection on the complexities of betrayal, the reasons why we do it. The motives, conscious and subconscious, that lead us into betrayal, and perhaps we might reflect on these things, and that might give us a better understanding of the motives of those who've betrayed us, whether through selfishness or weakness or fear or anything else. How did Jesus feel as he received the 30 pieces of silver in his hand, the price of his betrayal? How did he feel in the Garden of Gethsemane when he kissed Jesus? Then they came and laid hands on him and arrested him. At about the turn of the 19th century, Hester Chumley wrote her poem, Betrayal. Still, as of old, men by themselves are priced. For 30 pieces, Judas sold himself, not Christ.